project. It is my pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Sabrina Morelli, and I'm the Program Manager at the RNAO for the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Project. I want to welcome you all today to the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Project webinar. This webinar aims to provide you with a better understanding of the project, learn about the different training components, and learn more about the evaluation of this exciting initiative. Please note that webinar number 2 will focus on foundations for a healthy school approach and will follow this webinar today. Today, our presenters include representatives from the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, and that includes myself, Sabrina Morelli, and Kyle Dielman. Representatives from Mind Your Mind, which are Andrea Kirkham, from Toronto Public Health, also representing the advisory committee of this project, and that's Michelle Jubin from Toronto Public Health. And finally, Tina Sahay, who is the director and the lead evaluator from the Mental Health Promotion Consulting Group. And it is our pleasure to be here with you today. The agenda for today's webinar will include an overview of the WebEx technology to become familiarized with the platform that we're currently using, an overview of the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Project, a review of the pre-training materials for youth and public health leads, an overview of the evaluation components of the project, and a discussion on the centralized training overview and logistics. After each section, we will stop and open up the lines for Q&A, and we have also dedicated time for answering more questions at the end of today's webinar. But before I begin, let me turn it over to Kyle to provide a quick run-through on the WebEx technology.
So most of you have joined already, so that's great. So thank you for that. If you haven't already connected your microphone and speaker, that's how we're going to be doing the audio instead of through teleconference, which will enable us to record these and have them available at a later date. There are several different pods that you can access. One on the top right, we have the chat box, and it should be highlighted in blue. And the other one is the Q&A that we'll be using. So just make sure that those are highlighted. And you should be good to use those pods. If both of those aren't working, then alternatively you can email myself or Sabrina, and we will be monitoring those emails if you have any questions along the way.
You're good? Perfect. So in this next section, we want to provide you with an overview of the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Project. But before we begin, I also want to provide some context as to who is the RNAO, or the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, and what is our involvement in mental health and addictions. So the RNAO is the professional organization for nurses in Ontario, and since 1925 has advocated for healthy public policy, promoted excellence in nursing practice, advances nurses' contribution to shaping the healthcare system, and influence decisions that affect nurses and the public that they serve. A signature program of the RNAO is the International Affairs and Best Practice Guidelines Center, whose focus is on the development, dissemination, implementation, and evaluation of clinical and healthy work environment best practice guidelines. The International Affairs and Best Practice Guidelines Center was funded by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care and was created in January 1999. The mandate of this program is to develop, implement, evaluate, disseminate, and support the uptake of clinical and healthy work environment best practice guidelines. And to date, the program has created 41 clinical and 10 healthy work environment best practice guidelines, and it's always growing. A key element of the Best Practice Guidelines program not only includes guideline development, but also includes various implementation strategies for nurses and other healthcare professionals to implement, evaluate, and sustain the uptake of best practices in their organizations. As part of the International Affairs and Best Practice Guidelines program, we are also funded to support best practice uptake through the participation in special initiatives and projects such as e-health, smoking cessation, mental health and addictions, and of course the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Program, just to name a few. The initiative that supports the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Project is the RNAO Mental Health and Addiction Initiative. The goal of this initiative is to enhance evidence-based care and services related to mental health and addictions across all care settings. The initiative engages nurses and other healthcare professionals in developing and utilizing mental health and addictions best practice guidelines in all clinical settings, and support implementation of best practices through the development of e-learns, webinars, champion workshops, and institutes. Through the various elements of this initiative, we aim to increase the capacity amongst nurses and other healthcare professionals to implement and sustain best practices in mental health and addictions. So how did the Youth Mental Health Champion Program start? In June 2014, the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care released a call for proposals for funding to support provincially based health promotion initiatives in communities across Ontario. At this time, the RNAO, based on experience in the Mental Health and Addictions Initiative, understood the need to develop and support nurses in developing youth-specific mental health promotion programming to support mental wellness and resiliency in local communities. So RNAO, in partnership with 6 public health units, responded to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care call for proposal and applied for funding. We were notified in August 2014 that we were successful with the proposal and were funded by the Healthy Community Fund for a 2-year grant. The Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Project aims to improve health and well-being of children and youth through a focus on mental health promotion, acceptance of mental illness, a reduction of related stigma, and substance misuse prevention. RNAO, in partnership with 6 public health units from across Ontario, will jointly prepare youth PR leaders and youth champions to increase knowledge and awareness of mental health and substance misuse issues, and develop resiliency in children, youth, and the communities they live within through capacity building and youth engagement activities. The project objectives aim to support students to become mental health leaders and champions in their local communities. Objectives of the project include, number 1, raising awareness about the mental health continuum to support overall well-being of youth and decrease stigma related to mental illness. Number 2, develop leadership and facilitation skills of participating youth. Number 3, to develop a cohort of mental health and addiction youth leaders and another cohort of youth champions. To engage youth mental health and addiction champions to develop, implement, evaluate creative youth engagement strategies to promote mental health, reduce the stigma of mental illness, and explore strategies to prevent substance use. And finally, number 5, to provide opportunities for health and educational professionals to collaborate with youth to implement mental health promotion initiatives in their local schools and communities. As mentioned earlier, the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Project worked with 6 public health units across Ontario. These health units include Thunder Bay District Health Unit, Temiskaming Health Unit, Porcupine Health Unit, Toronto Public Health, Niagara Public Health, and Grey Bruce Health Unit. We have also engaged provincial partners including School Mental Health Assist, the Center for Excellence for Child and Youth Mental Health, the Dare to Dream program, as well as Mind Your Mind. Our public health units are working very closely with the district school boards that will be implementing the project in partnership with the public health units. These boards are included on the slide that you see right now. We are very fortunate to be working in collaboration with the school boards and school mental health assist leads who have provided their expertise, their time, and dedication to this project. And for that, we thank you. At the heart of the program is the youth. Youth are the key in planning and implementation of the project. The structure of the program starts at the bottom with an advisory committee who is consistent of the provincial partners as well as the 6 public health units that you heard earlier. And the advisory committee provides overall advice and strategic direction as required throughout the planning, implementation, and evaluation of the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Project. At each local site has a local steering committee, which provides direction and input and support at the local implementation of this project. Each local site is working in collaboration with their school mental health assist lead and their district school boards. At each local site, there will be a minimum of 1 public health lead, a school lead, and local youth leaders. These individuals provide support in planning, implementation, and evaluation of the various components of the project. Youth lead, public health leads, and selected school staff will participate in a pre-training and a provincial centralized training session and will work together to create a cohort of locally based youth champions. These youth champions will work collaboratively with the project leads to plan, implement, and evaluate local-based youth initiatives that create awareness on mental health and wellness and work towards creating supportive communities. As you have heard, there are a variety of leads in this project. I would like to take a moment to focus on the unique roles of each of our leads, and in particular, the public health lead, the youth lead, and the youth champion. A public health lead is a representative from your local health unit that is partnering on this project. Their responsibilities are in the area of planning, implementation, and evaluation support for the RNAO Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion project in your local community. Public health leads are members of the local steering committee and provide support for the program integration within their organizations and your community. They support other health unit staff in implementing the project. They collaborate with other health unit staff, school staff, to develop mentors and youth leads and youth champions. And they network with other professionals in their organization, their district school boards, and their local community about the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion program. A youth lead are local youth who support aspects, again, of the planning, implementation, and evaluation of the project. They work in conjunction with their local public health unit and their district school board. The youth lead will attend a centralized training with other youth leads and public health leads and selected school staff to learn more about the mental health awareness, substance misuse prevention, stigma reduction, and system navigation for Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion program. They will also contribute to the planning of local workshops, may it be in planning of the actual session outline, some of the activities and resources or strategies to recruit youth. They will also participate in the assessing the needs of the local schools and their community and incorporate this into the Champion program. They also will contribute to the creation of the brand and the logo of the program, and also the interactive resource tool that will be used across all Champion workshops. They will assist with recruitment and training and mentoring of the youth champions. And in conjunction with youth champions, they will plan, implement, and evaluate local youth engagement strategies within their local schools. Youth leads may also have membership on local steering committees to provide that youth voice at that local level. A youth champion, which is our final lead, is a youth in your local community that has attended a local champion training workshop facilitated by the youth lead, the public health lead, and school staff. Youth champions will work collaboratively with the youth lead, the school staff, and public health staff to plan, implement, and evaluate local youth engagement strategies with their local schools and communities to create awareness regarding mental health, wellness, and work to create supportive and resilient environments. So now that you've had an understanding and an overview of the project, let's take a better look into the various roles, into the two training components for the youth leads and the public health leads. The training for the project includes two distinct aspects. The first will be the pre-training, and the second will be the centralized training. The pre-training is to be conducted prior to the centralized training. It aims to develop a baseline level of knowledge regarding mental health promotion. We will get into more specifics on the pre-training in the next couple of slides and the material required for this training. A centralized training for youth leads, public health leads, and other staff involved in the project across Ontario will occur November 4th and November 5th, 2014 in Ontario. And we'll learn more about the centralized training logistics and content covered more in the following slides. The purpose for the pre-trained material is to gain an understanding and a background knowledge about mental health, stress, and wellness through the use of an interactive web-based resource, videos, and reflective activities. Number two, to learn more about the local community resources available to support mental health and well-being for youth. And number three, to learn about the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Project and the role of the youth lead. On the slide, we'll show you the materials that was sent to each site for youth leads. This pre-training workbook and workshop, which varies by site, will help youth and adults involved in the project prepare for the centralized training. The pre-materials have been sent to your local site, and they include a USB key, which is on the right-hand side of the slide. And on the USB key is the actual workbook for youth leads. The mytoolkit.ca promotional materials, which are the three, the pamphlet, the postcard, and the business card on the right-hand side as well. We have also included materials in the folder on Kids Help Phone and Connects Ontario cards. And there is also a folder for youth to put in the material that they may receive or may collect along the process of the pre-training and the centralized training. As well as you will also have received an addressed stamped envelope to insert the evaluation, the pre-survey that will be emailed to all the sites shortly. Please note that with the workbook for youth, it is included in the USB key. The provision of USB key was a key recommendation from the youth that are on our advisory and that are assisting us with developing the training materials. And this is based on their knowledge and experience when they work with youth. Please note, however, that if you do encounter a youth who has challenges with the utilization of the USB key, for example, lack of access to a computer or any other form of technology that might be needed to support the training, please do let us know so that we can send over hard copies of the material to you to share with the youth. The pre-training workbook for youth consists of 2 activities. Number 1 is mytoolkit.ca, a review where youth can learn more about mental health and well-being, stigma, stress, and self-management strategies, and resources that can support youth mental health and well-being. And number 2 is scavenger hunt activity, where youth will learn more about locally based resources to support mental health and well-being for youth. The delivery of the pre-training materials varies by site, and please know that some sites may include a 1-day or 2-day orientation session in collaboration with their local public health unit in schools. Please do check in with your local public health lead to gain a better understanding of what your local training may look like. I will now turn it over to Andrea from Mind Your Mind and Michelle from Toronto Public Health to provide an overview of the pre-training workshop materials. So Andrea.
Hi everyone, this is Andrea Kirkham from Mind Your Mind, and I'm the curriculum writer at Mind Your Mind. I'm just going to talk to you just quickly. Mind Your Mind, if you're not familiar, I'm sure you are, is a youth mental health and engagement program. So we partner with youth and the professionals who serve them to create resources and information that fight the stigma of mental health. So we don't provide services, we foster conversations. We work alongside youth to empower them with good information so they can talk about mental health with one another and the people who support them, and reach out for help when needed. We've been doing this for about 10 years now, and we always work with youth to co-create the tools and resources to hopefully ultimately reduce the stigma of mental health as well. If we go into the next slide, I just want to talk to you. I'm going to be showing you the A to Z learning modules that you're going to be using as part of your pre-training strategy. I just wanted to give you some context as to how and why these were created. An important collaboration for Mind Your Mind in the last 4 years has been the Young Health Program. The Young Health Program is AstraZeneca's global community investment initiative. So it was created to help young people in need around the world to deal with the health problems they face and hopefully improve their chances for a better life in the future. The global program is a partnership between AstraZeneca, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and Plan International. The Canadian partners for the Young Health Program include AstraZeneca Canada, Mind Your Mind, PHE Canada, and Boys and Girls Club of Canada. So I'm just letting you know this because you should know that the resources on my toolkit, including the A to Z modules you'll be using as part of the pre-training resources, were created as part of Mind Your Mind's contribution to this project. So if we go to the next slide, there's some screenshots of the A to Z modules. Mytoolkit.ca, including these learning modules found on there, are online. They're freely accessible, and they include videos, interactive tools and games, links to resources, and pop-up information throughout. I know we're always looking to use resources that are evidence-based, so I'll let you know that a little bit of a development background. In 2009, Mind Your Mind was approached by our local school board to develop online lessons, one of which was created for the grade 11 health and phys ed course. We did that, and these lessons were then evaluated as part of a national study by the Mental Health Commission of Canada called Opening Minds. This is a national study looking at mental health resources and how they impacted stigma reduction. The results were very encouraging. They found that our online lessons did well, and when they measured that changed attitudes towards those with mental illness. And it also indicated the method of delivery, i.e. online interactive learning modules, was an effective way to learn. So we created the A to Z modules that you guys will be using, built on what was working according to that study. So if we go if we go to mytoolkit.ca, actually, I think I'll jump there now if we want to.
So, Andrea, you're actually presenter now, so
Okay.
you can,
great.
if you want to pull up the website.
I will. There it is.
Yeah.
All right. So mytoolkit.ca features. It's got a few different resources.
Andrea?
Yeah.
Sorry, you just have to share your desktop as well. So if you want to go to share up at the top and then my desktop, and we should be able to see it afterward.
Just share my desktop. There we go.
There you go.
Ta-da! Got it?
Almost.
I think it's just still loading.
Okay.
All right.
Can you see?
Yep.
Oh, great. Great. So what we're looking at here is mytoolkit.ca. Mytoolkit.ca features a few different resources, but the ones that you guys are going to be using as part of your pre-training materials is the wellness module and the stress module. The wellness module, when we created these, our objectives were to have youth that use it know what mental health and emotional wellness is. Know what can impact a person's mental health and emotional wellness, have some clarification around the myths and facts of mental health issues, know some strategies and tactics to improve their overall mental health and emotional wellness, and recognize some resources they can turn to if they needed help. The stress module is a little bit more focused. We are trying to help youth with this module know what stress is, know what the benefits and drawbacks to stress are, identify the warning signs of stress, understand the repercussions of mishandled stress on mental health, know some strategies and tactics to deal with stress, and then recognize some resources to use in case they need some help. So I'm going to just go through, I'm not going to go through every single page of the module, I'm just going to go through quickly because you guys are going to be exploring that with the youth leads in your community. So here we are at the homepage of the wellness module. You'll see there's a menu of options here. These are sort of like the chapters or the different topics that are housed within the modules. I'm going to show you the facilitator guide. Facilitator guides were developed to support any youth serving professionals who want to use the modules by providing a good outline, options for delivery, and ideas for discussion questions and extension activities. So this is a downloadable document. I would highly or strongly encourage you to begin your planning by downloading and printing these facilitator guides and then really taking some time to familiarize yourself with the modules. So going through each page and sort of checking out the tools and the videos on each page. Depending on how much time you have with your youth leads to do some of this pre-training, you'll want to figure out what tools and questions and activities or videos you want to explore with them and more in depth. The great thing about the A to Z resources is that they're designed to be something that you can go through almost like as in a small group, projecting it, or it could be something that you give to the youth to sort of click through on their own at home. So you might do a combination of those things depending on how you want to deliver and how much time you've got with the youth in your community. Either way, the facilitator guides I think will be of a huge help to you in your planning. So you can skip around to any sort of topic you want to. I'm going to start at the beginning and actually just click through in a linear way. So if you start with what is emotional wellness, this chapter gives us some pretty good foundation and description of what wellness is using a variety of techniques. There are videos, there's sort of an overview of what it means to be resilient, and then there's some visual representations, artwork of what wellness means, and interviews with musicians that are included in this chapter. I want to point out these little green icons. These are going to be found throughout both the stress and the wellness modules. They are sort of the connect the dot icons, they're called, and they're designed to intuitively encourage the users to hover over to either get more in-depth information or to prompt some reflective thinking or conversations by asking questions. So for instance, on this one, we've got some artwork that was created by youth to describe what they thought wellness meant, and then if you hover over on this dot, it says, you know, how would you paint the idea of emotional wellness? So those dots are found throughout, and they're pretty helpful to drive some discussion and to give a little bit more information in depth. Mental illnesses are discussed, just in case you're wondering. This is very wellness focused. There are parts in this module that do touch on mental illness and addiction, but we're sort of coming for this module. We're coming from a place of wellness, trying to frame mental health as a universal issue and focus on what makes a person well. If I go back to this artwork thing, I want to also point out that there are activities and tools and resources that are all the way throughout these modules that young people, like the youth leads in your community, could then file away and remember and use later in their work with some of their youth engagement strategies. So this artwork activity is a pretty neat idea. This might be something that they take back to their community and say, maybe I'm going to do this with some of the champions in my local community. So keep that in mind too, that this is a little bit of mental health 101 for them, but it also might give them some ideas for some strategies to use as they complete their work as youth leads. So we go through, this is an interactive tool that's got quotes about wellness. So there's lots of different types of interactives in here. At the end of each chapter, you'll see this is the end page to this chapter. One is emotional wellness. You have the option to either go home to the next topic, go back a page, or here you can click right to the activities chapter, which I'll show you in a minute. So I'm going to click next. So the What Gets in the Way chapter is basically about what can get in the way of somebody being well. It includes information about stress and its effect on a person's mental health, and information about mental illnesses and addiction, mostly a definition of these. There's some interactive quizzes in this section. This is a great way to just sort of gamify or just give some information in an interactive way. And this, again, this is something that the youth champions or the youth leads in your community might come back to and use later on in their preparation to do some youth engagement stuff in their community. So you can see it gives some pop-up information when you get the questions. This is the page that sort of touches a little bit on mental illnesses. You can see there's some pop-up information. So to give a little bit of background again, and some connect the dots questioning going on there. So we'll click through. We get to the end of this chapter, what gets in the way, we move on to getting through tough times. So after learning about wellness and what can get in the way, now we move into some prevention and planning strategies, what someone could do or say if they thought a friend was struggling, and different types of formal and informal support. There are some interactive tools featured in this section, including a prompted journal reflection. This is what you're looking at here, this life journal tool. This is a Mind Your Mind tool that you can find on our main site as well. And it sort of allows people to sort of type in their answers. You know, and this is just some prompted questions to think about what works, what doesn't work, what can set somebody off, and then plan for the future and identify some supports. I want to just talk to you just quickly about this. You may or may not choose to do this with the youth leads in your community, but if you do, I want you to understand that none of this information is archived. Like, I'm typing into this, and then if I were to navigate off of this tool, this just disappears. Nobody's saving this information. It's totally private. And so what a young person can do is that they could type in their answers, and then at the end, there's the option to print. Or another way you could do this is actually print it first and then actually handwrite your answers. I'm just letting you know, because sometimes you get questions about where does this information go when somebody types into this, and I just want you to feel good about the fact that it's not being like archived anywhere or saved. When we get past this section, we get into, hang on, I'm just going through, this is still some, we get into the myths about emotional wellness section. This is going to be the chapter that sort of focuses on stigma and where stigma comes from. The section covers what stigma is, how it might affect someone's ability to get help, common misconceptions about what mental illness is and isn't, and a powerful personal story video about schizophrenia. So I'll just click through this. So there's, again, some myths and facts on here that you can hover through and think about how you might be delivering this information to youth leads, whether you're going to be stopping and having a conversation. This video that's featured on this page, as I mentioned before, is a personal story video about a young woman living with schizophrenia. I want to show you this. There are some opportunities in this module. So you see I'm clicking here to check out some interviews with celebrities, bands, and author links here. If you click on these hyperlinks, it will take you back to the mindyourmind.ca site, and you're welcome to do that. However, for the purposes of what you're doing here, and you're using this to train your youth leads a little bit before the centralized training, I just want to warn you that if you do click to the mindyourmind.ca site, first of all, there's a ton of content on there, so you can kind of fall down the rabbit hole and navigate away from what you're trying to do here on this web platform. But also, there's content on mindyourmind.ca that might be a bit uncomfortable for a school setting, whether that be Catholic or public. So I just want you to be mindful of that. There's not really any reason why you would need to click on these hyperlinks and go back to mindyourmind.ca. You're welcome to, but just please be mindful that there's some content on there that might not be totally comfortable, like I said, for a school setting. When we get to the end of the last chapter in both modules is an activities page. All this is a list of activities that you could do with your youth leads, or that they could do in their community to build on the ideas discussed in the module. So these are just sort of intentional, empowering ideas for extension activities that you could use or adapt or not. I'm just going to go back and show you. I'm just going to go back to mytoolkit.ca, and we'll just quickly look at the stress. I won't spend as much time on the stress module because it's set up very similar to the wellness module. Again, there's the facilitator guide there, which again I would encourage you to take a look at in your planning and figure out. It gives a nice overview of what's discussed in the stress module. So if we click on Start at What Is It? Ooh, there we go. It's just taking a second to load. This sort of talks a little bit about what stress is and helps you to identify what might be a cause of stress for them personally and how stress is different from anxiety. There's a little bit of video here about what the difference is between stress and anxiety. And there's some good conversations here that can happen throughout here for self-reflection, to identify personal stressors and discuss why different people get stressed out by different things. If we go into the good and bad of stress, this is an interesting chapter because it helps us discuss a little bit about how stress is a normal part of life and how stress can actually be a good thing. So on this page we hear from youth, these little quotes from youth about whether they think stress can ever be a positive thing. And there's lots of opportunities here to hover over these little connect the dots icons and get some more information. If we move on to the next chapter, this is just a one-page chapter. There's only one page in this one, and this is identifying stress. This is just basically a nice graphic that breaks down how stress can manifest in different ways for different people. And it might be a good jumping off point for a conversation about symptoms and stress, and open up a good conversation about like what causes stress, how stress manifests for different people, and have you sort of start to identify that. This is the longest chapter. The How to Cope chapter in the stress module is the longest because here we go through a lot of information about stress prevention and management. The focus here is on how different strategies work for different people, and hopefully a realization or way for youth to do some self-reflecting and identifying of what works for them. There's a lot of interactive tools in this section. A lot of hover-overs, lots of discussions can happen here. You may or may not choose to have your youth leads play any of these games or explore any of these tools. I'm just clicking through and it's getting a little slow here. That's up to you and how much time you have, but it's still good for them to know that they're there because, again, they might come back to this resource later as they're planning how they're going to deliver information to the youth in their community, and it might be great for them to understand that there are these interactive tools online that they can access. These tools are taking a second to load, but they are there. There's interactive tools on these pages. I'm going to click now. Oh, I wanted to just talk about this. We had talked earlier about wanting, because of a healthy schools approach and wanting to talk about how to deal with stress and mental health issues upstream before they happen. There's a lot of talk here about physical health. So in this section, it talks about how exercise can be a good way to cope with stress and having a healthy lifestyle. Again, we end the module with an activity section, and again, these are activities that you might choose to do with the youth leads, or that they might come back to you to sort of think of some different activities they can do in their community with the champions. So that's a quick overview. I know I would encourage you to download the facilitator guide and take a nice, careful, close look at all of this information, so that when it's time for you to share the information, you feel comfortable with the resource. So thank you. That's the end of that.
Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah, no worries. Now, did you want me to talk a little bit about this now, the design?
Yes, please go ahead, Andrea.
Sure, no problem. So ahead of the centralized training, Mind Your Mind's role in the Youth Champions Project is to create a tool that youth leads can use with the champions in their community to give them some mental health 101 information. So we're designing basically, we've got a game that we're putting together for the Champions Project. And we need to get a little bit of work done ahead of the centralized training. So what we're doing is we're hosting 2 teleconferences with a small subgroup of 7 to 10 youth leads in October. The first one is October 8th, and the second one's going to be a couple weeks after that. The youth leads that participate on these calls will learn a little bit about marketing strategy and help us to develop some mock-ups to create a branding look and feel for the tool and just for the project itself, so that when we get print materials and stuff made, we're going to have a nice branding look and feel, like a logo that youth have come up with. So that's what's happening on these calls. If we go to the next slide, I guess, can we just go to the next slide? Thank you. So the purpose of these meetings will be to create the concepts for the name and the interactive tool Mind Your Mind is putting together, and some logo and branding ideas. The work done on these calls is going to help us, Mind Your Mind, meet the tight deadline for the tool development, and it's going to engage some of the youth in a really great way, more fully in the design process. And then those youth that take that participate in those calls will then get to present the logo ideas to the rest of the group at centralized training in November, and also lead everyone during the centralized training in a process to sort of make final decisions on the look and feel. So as far as who gets to participate, any sites who have youth recruited by the end of September are welcome to put forward 1 to 2 names of youth leads that might be interested in participating in these calls, and put those names forward to Sabrina, who will then pass them on to me, and we can figure out who's gonna participate and who can participate. I'll just say that we have sent out already some documents about these pre-calls, and sort of articulated the aims and the objectives and what we need from the youth. And so if you have any questions about the design subgroup, please direct them to me. You can email me anytime, and my email is pretty simple. It's andrea@mindyourmind.ca.
Okay, hi everyone. This is Michelle Dreeben. I wanted to talk about the second part of the training materials, which is the scavenger hunt. So this second activity is encouraged to be completed by youth leads. The scavenger hunt is designed as a fun activity to help youth leads learn about resources to support youth mental health and well-being. The resources required to complete this module include a paper and pen, a question list, which is in the training manual, a map of your local community, which youth will obtain from their public health lead, and access to a computer with internet and a phone. The scavenger hunt can be done alone or in groups with other youth leads. Youth also have the option of searching for resources on the internet and/or calling community agencies to learn more about the services they provide. There is a list of 7 questions provided in the workbook. For example, these questions include, where could a young person go for credible and reliable information on mental health and well-being? Or where could a young person go for help if they are feeling stressed or overwhelmed? Youth need to seek out a minimum of 2 to 3 resources that address the question. Youth will then need to record the name of the support or community agency, service provided, and contact info. As youth explore what's available in their community and complete questions in the workbook, they can also plot the location of the agency or resource on their community map. We recommend that this list is shared with other youth leads, the public health leads, and school staff during your orientation session or meetings following the training. It's a great engagement activity and gets youth involved in learning how to seek out locally based resources. You may want to also consider compiling the list to have one comprehensive list of supports for mental health in your community. The next screen also provides you an overview of some of the pre-training materials that's directed for public health leads. This pre-training workbook and associated materials will help you become prepared for working on the Youth Mental Health and Addictions Champion project. The materials in this package will help you to, number 1, learn about the Youth Mental Health and Addictions Champion project and your role as a public health lead. Learn about the foundations for a healthy school. An additional webinar will be held this afternoon on this topic. Number 3, develop familiarity with the youth lead pre-training materials. And last, learn about other supplementary resources available to support you in this project. The pre-training workbook for public health leads provides an overview of activities, goals for activities, allotted time requirements for completion of the activities, resources required, and instructions. The public health lead workbook and training materials consist of, number 1, the Youth Mental Health Addictions Champion Project Overview PowerPoint. This was developed to provide background information about project goals, objectives, and processes. The project presentation also aims to provide public health leads with an overview of the overall project. This presentation may be used at the pre-training session with youth leads and/or school staff to develop a common understanding of the Youth Mental Health and Addictions Champion project and youth lead roles. The second activity, which is the foundations for a healthy school. Now this contains a PowerPoint, a toolkit, and webinar following this one that can assist in understanding the foundations of a healthy school. The Healthy Schools Tools Kit is designed to guide schools through the steps of creating a healthier school. It also provides specific tools and strategies to support school staff and youth leaders in forming a planning committee to assess, implement, and evaluate mental health initiatives related to the Youth Mental Health and Addictions Champion project. To complete this module, leads will have to review the PowerPoint presentation and accompany webinar and explore the other resources provided in the activity. Activity number 3 is the Youth Lead pre-training materials. Now this activity provides the Youth Lead pre-training workbook to allow public health leads and develop school staff the opportunity to develop familiarity with Youth Lead pre-training materials. This webinar will also assist in developing an understanding of the Youth Mental Health and Addictions Champion project the training, and the overall evaluation. Activity number 4, which is the other supplementary resources, we've actually included a list of resources that can be used by public health leads and school staff to enhance the in-person training that may occur with youth leads and or youth champions. The supplementary materials include materials on substance use prevention, mental health, and the RNEO best practice guidelines on enhancing adolescent development. It is recommended that you review in the entirety the workbook activities, both webinars, this one and the one on Foundations for a Healthy School, and the supplementary resources to develop a better understanding of the project and youth mental health and well-being.
So before we move over to evaluation, at this time what we'll do is we'll open up the lines for any questions that you may have with regard to the overview of the project or of any of the training components, and particularly the pre-training material. We will go through another section on centralized training after the evaluation. So we'll open up the lines. Please just ask your question or use the chat box or the Q&A box and or send me an email. Again, if there are any questions, just repeating, please do type that in the chat box or in the Q&A box, or just, you all have presenter rights, so you can all just tell us, ask us your questions. Wait for another minute. Okay, given there are no other questions right now, none are coming in, we will have another opportunity at the end of the webinar to ask questions or provide any comments then. At this point, I'd like to move over to Tina Sahay, who is the Director of the Health Promotion Consulting Group and our lead evaluator for the program, to go through the evaluation components of the, oh, 1 second, we have one question from Susan. Thank you, Susan. The question is, the Mind Your Mind evaluation component completed by the Mental Health Commission, is there a one-pager available for this? Because this would be valuable information to share with our school boards in case asked. Andrea,
sure, I can share some stuff with you guys. I can do that this afternoon when I get back to the office.
Perfect. Thank you for the question. Susan, there is also in your packages that were sent, there is a one-page pamphlet. There's a pamphlet that was sent, the bigger one, which also has a lot of background information on My Toolkit. I would also reflect on that too, to see if that can help you with answering some of your questions or explaining My Toolkit to the school board. Great question. Okay, so we'll ask questions and provide comments later on at the end of the presentation. As I said earlier, what we'll do is we'll turn over to Tina, who's the lead evaluator from the Health Promotion Consulting Group, to take us through a walkthrough of the evaluation components. Tina.
Thanks, Sabrina, and hi, everyone. So what I'd like to do today is just to give you an overview of the evaluation of the project. I'm going to be talking about the evaluation focus and what we hope to learn, and then I'll provide you with a run-through of the evaluation instruments that we're going to be using to collect the data. And what I really want to do is highlight for you in particular those items that we're hoping public health leads will be able to provide support for. So to begin, slide. There we go. Sorry, this is a little bit small. I think you all have the evaluation plan, I believe, so you've probably seen this before, but I'm just going to take a little run through of the program logic model for the project. So the logic model has been developed to...
Tina?
Yes?
I'm sorry, can you just speak up? We're having a little difficulty hearing you.
Oh, sure, sorry.
Thank you.
So the logic model has been developed to show how the project activities are intended to lead to short and longer term impacts on the youth and other stakeholders involved in the project. Is my voice okay now? Just checking. Yep, okay. So as you can see, the overall objective of the project is to improve the health and well-being of children and youth through a focus on mental health promotion, acceptance of mental illness, reduction of related stigma, and substance misuse prevention. That's the top box there. There's 5 main components that are associated with the project, and these are laid out across the top here. So there's the Youth and Public Health Lead, the Youth Champion Cohort, there's program promotion, partner collaboration, and support and capacity building. The logic model also lists a number of activities, which I won't go into a lot of detail about, but these are associated with each of the different components. And the idea is that you read down the activities are associated with the components, and then if I advance the slide, you'll see that we then state if we actually complete these activities, what the expected results are supposed to be. So the process outcomes row here talks about ensuring that stakeholders are satisfied with the activities they've participated in, that they're engaged, and so on. And this level here isn't really going to be the focus of the evaluation, but we do have some evaluation activities built in to help us get at this information around satisfaction and engagement. What we're really interested in is this row here and the next one, which I'll show you on the next slide. And this one here is the short-term outcomes, where we really want to know about the impact on the youth around their knowledge, attitudes, awareness, skills, confidence to work with other youth. And we also want to know what impact the project has had on both the leads and the youth champions. As you move further down the logic model, we get into the longer term outcomes. And as you can see in the very last row here, the ultimate hope of the project is that we'll have increased resiliency, reduced mental health stigma, and improved health and well-being among children and youth. Most of our measurements are going to occur here and in the shorter term outcomes, which was on the previous slide. We're not measuring at this point the long-term outcomes, because although these changes, we're hoping some of them will be brought about during this period in the evaluation, these are really much longer term things that take, a couple of years to bring about. So in this project, we have roughly a 5-month time frame, so we won't be measuring too much here. Our focus is going to be up here. So the primary focus of the evaluation is to determine the extent to which the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champions project has achieved its planned short and medium term results, as I just showed you was laid out in the program logic model. We also have 3 secondary focuses for the evaluation, including the first one, to document the successes, gaps, and lessons learned from the project, including those related to the Public Health Unit partnership with RNAO, those related to school staff, to youth, and to the Public Health Unit. And here, as I mentioned before, we're looking at satisfaction with involvement, partnership, impact on work, etc., really looking at the process element of the project. Another secondary focus, we want to develop a snapshot of provincial, possibly local youth mental health awareness and stigma, substance misuse, and overall health and well-being. And the purpose of this piece is really to provide some context. We want to have some comparison, if possible, between the youth in our project and the youth in the wider community or across the province, to be able to show that at the outset there were some similarities, there's a baseline similarity, and hopefully as a result of the project we're going to be able to show some improvements among our youth. While again this might not be achievable completely in the short time frame of the project, it will be a good thing to have this baseline data, which may be useful to health units RNAO later on down the road. So we do have somebody from RNAO that's pulling together that information right now.
Tina,
Yeah?
can you just speak up a little bit more, please?
Sure, sorry, I'm not sure why you can't hear me very well. Okay. Just keep reminding me if it happens again. And finally, the third secondary evaluation focus is to examine the sustainability capacity of the program and to make recommendations for enhancing sustainability. So this slide here gives you an overview of the evaluation activities. I'm going to go through these quickly, and then I'll go into each one in a little bit more detail after this slide. But as you can see from looking at this slide, right now, as youth leads are being recruited or soon will be recruited, the pre-survey will be administered to them. Then we have a Youth Champions pre-survey, which will be administered at the first workshop and the first training session with the champions. We're going to have a lull for a few months after that, and then beginning in February, perhaps March, we'll administer a post-survey to the youth leads and a post-survey to the youth champions. At this time, we're also going to be collecting some process data through the focus groups with youth and through focus groups with the public health leads. And then around the same time, a little bit later in the spring, we'll conduct a survey of school staff who supported the project. And the last evaluation activity is something that we've called activity profile. Essentially, what we're doing here is we're hoping that youth, the leads, the champions, and other youth that they may have worked with, at some point during the project, they will want to profile one of the activities that they've been working on. They can use whatever method they choose to do this with. We're thinking maybe a story, a video, photo voice, whatever they decide is appealing to them. And that's going to happen. It can happen anytime they're ready between the start of the project toward the end of the project. So as you can see from this timeline, the evaluation activities are beginning very soon, and we're anticipating that they will end around March of next year. So what I want to do now is just go into some of these activities in a little bit more detail, and I'll try to highlight where we need support from the public health leads. So the first one is the Youth Leads pre-survey, and as I said, this is actually happening right now as youth are being recruited in some of the sites, and as I know, some of the sites are planning actually to very soon recruit youth. This is a paper-based survey. It takes around 15 minutes to complete, and the idea is that the public health lead will give the survey to the youth lead when they're recruited for the project, along with the self-addressed stamped envelope, which I think Kyle had mentioned earlier. The survey can be completed at that time, right on site, or the youth can take it away with them and complete it at a later date, but it has to be completed before they attend the centralized training. Once they complete it, the survey is returned to RNAO directly by the youth in the self-addressed stamped envelope. The other survey that youth are going to complete is an online survey. This is the post survey, and we're using the Fluid Survey platform to do this. So the idea is that the public health leads will have to provide to myself the youth lead's contact information, basically just their email address. And I will then send a link to the youth to be able to complete the post survey. And this piece will be done in February or March of next year. For the youth leads, we're also hoping to run a focus group. The public health leads will extend the invitation to participate in the focus group, and we're asking for 1 to 2 youth from each site to volunteer. We're hoping to get 6 to 12 youth in total for the focus group. The public health leads will provide the names of the youth volunteers to myself, and then I'll do all the logistics for the focus group. I'll contact the youth and arrange for the focus group to be held during lunch hour or after school. It'll be roughly around 45 minutes long. For the youth champions, somewhat similar to the youth leads, we have a pre-survey, which is again a paper-based survey. It takes about 15 minutes to complete. The idea is that the workshop facilitator, when the champions attend the workshop facilitator will give out the survey to the youth champions before beginning the workshop. The youth champions will fill out the pre-survey right there and there on the spot. The workshop facilitator collects the surveys and then returns them all at once to RNAO. So this survey for the youth champions, we don't want them to take this away and fill it out on their own. I'm not sure if we'll get them back. It's best if they can do it right there on the spot together. And then again, similar to the Youth Leads, we have a Youth Champions Post survey done online via Fluid Survey. Again, the Public Health Leads will provide to me the Youth Champions email addresses, and I'll send out the link to the post survey sometime around February, March of next year. A little bit more about the activity profiles that I mentioned. So the Youth Leads, the Champions, and perhaps other youth with whom they've worked from the school or the community are going to be asked to profile an activity using a method of their choice. There has been an issue around if they're going to be using something like Photo Voice, what about putting photos of the youth in the profiles? Youth Leads and Champions are going to have to consent to be photographed, and I'm going to talk about the consent form in a minute. But there is a space in the consent form where they can check off whether they're willing to have photos of themselves in these activity profiles and perhaps elsewhere in different components of the project. The youth from the school or community that they may be working with, we're not asking for them to provide consent for that. So we have to make sure, and I'm going to develop a little bit more of an outline and some details around what this needs to look like. And we will talk about that issue of the photographing in there, and that we cannot put photographs of youth from the school community who haven't consented to this. We can't have them in these activity profiles. Another piece of the evaluation that I mentioned was the Public Health Leads Focus Group. We'll be asking Public Health Leads to participate in a focus group next year in the spring, around February, March. And we're hoping to have about 6 to 12 public health leads on that group. I should say that these focus groups are going to be done via telephone. They'll be about 45 minutes long, and we will arrange this at a time that's agreed upon by all the participants. That's convenient to everybody. I'll be responsible for arranging all of those logistics. And the purpose of the focus group with the public health leads is really to talk about the process issues, talk about the partnership, talk about sustainability, and any impact that the project has had on the public health unit itself. And then finally, we have a school staff survey. And this survey will also be an online survey. We'll use the Fluid Survey platform. I'm going to be sending the survey to school staff by email, so I'll need, again, the public health leads to provide me with the contact information for any school staff who were supporting this project. And we're going to try to do this, again, similar timing in February, March of next year. The last thing I want to talk about is the informed consent. This is a really important piece of the project and of the evaluation. And it's required for all youth in the project, for everyone that's participating. We need consent for the project components and consent for the evaluation component. And the idea is that the public health lead will explain the consent to the youth leads and the youth champions. They will provide them with the consent form and then ensure that the signed consent is received prior to any program activity. So just to clarify a little bit, we're asking for signed consent from youth if we're asking for signed consent from all youth, and if they're under 18 years of age, we need consent from their parents as well. The consent form is being finalized, or it has been finalized, and you'll be receiving this shortly. You'll see when you look at it, it's fairly detailed, and it pretty much outlines everything that youth and parents need to know to make an informed decision about whether or not to participate in the project. It actually has space in there for all the different components of the project, the different training, the overnight piece, all the different evaluation components, and they have to check off separately which ones they consent to and which ones they don't. It's really important, and I can't emphasize this enough, that the signed consent is received prior to beginning any program activity or any evaluation activity with the youth. If this consent hasn't been received, we really can't be administering any pre-surveys to the youth without that. So this is a very critical piece. So just a little bit about next steps. We're currently pilot testing the Youth Leads pre-survey. This should be done by the end of the week, and it's going to be ready to go. And you will be receiving that along with the self-addressed stamped envelope. Actually, I believe that the pre-survey is going to be emailed to you. You will receive the consent form, which is now finalized, and a number of the sites are currently in ethics review or wrapping up ethics review, so that should be completed, hoping by the end of September. And then just the last thing in red there, that you will receive the complete package of evaluation instruments and consent forms by, it says mid-October, but I'm going to change that to the beginning of October because we are almost ready to go. And that's it. I hope that gives you a clear idea of the evaluation component. And I'll do my best now to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Perfect. Thank you, Tina, for the overview. We'll open up the lines again for question and answer. If you could please type in your question in the chat box or the Q&A box or send them to my email. That would be great. We'll wait a couple more seconds. Again, if you have any questions, can you please type them into the chat box or the bottom Q&A box or send it to my email, please. This is Sabrina speaking. Perfect. Seeing that there are no questions, we will move forward. Again, please do remember, if you do have a question, please do ask it at the end of the presentation. If there is anything right now that does come up between now and the end of the presentation and you are unable to use the chat box or the Q&A box, feel free to email me as we go through the remainder of the presentation, and Kyle is monitoring my email for that right now. Thank you. So I want to take you really quickly through having a little bit more of an understanding and understanding what will be happening at the two-day centralized training on November 4th and 5th, as well as talk about a little bit more logistics that you would need to know. So the centralized training will take place on November 4th and 5th at Teen Ranch, which is a youth camp in Caledon, Ontario. This two-day training will take place in a camp-style retreat format that provides an atmosphere of community while keeping youth engaged and learning while having fun throughout the 2 days. The planning committee who is planning the centralized training, both the curriculum and the logistics, comprises of RNAO, Ontario Centre for Excellence for Child and Youth Mental Health, Mind Your Mind, School Mental Health Assist, and Toronto Public Health, who is acting in representation of the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Advisory Committee. We have been fortunate enough to also engage 2 youth leads who also sit on the advisory committee and who will be part of planning are part of the planning of the committee of the curriculum, as well as will be facilitating the 2-day training. I'll just turn it over to Michelle to walk you through what will be happening over the 2 days.
So in day 1 of the training, that will be facilitated by 2 youth from the Center of Excellence for Child and Youth Mental Health, and will cover topics that include stigma, mental health awareness, youth engagement, and developing resiliency. The curriculum for these sessions will be facilitated in an engaging manner using group work, lived experience speakers, and art-based strategies. There will also be time built in for grounding activities for youth to be able to network and build relationships with other youth leads from across Ontario. In day 2 of the training, that will be facilitated by Mind Your Mind and will cover strategies that can be used to engage champions and other youth. In this session, topics related to social marketing and program branding will be covered. Furthermore, youth will use interactive, dynamic, and fun activities to design a branding for the program and develop a tool that will be used at all champion workshops. More information will be provided to public health leads regarding the centralized training in the coming weeks.
So just to really quickly go over some logistics, it's Kyle speaking here at RNAO. Getting to Teen Ranch, it's located at 2682 here on Ontario Street in Caledon, like Sabrina had said before. Day one of the training will begin at 10 a.m. and end at 9 p.m. And the second day will begin at 9 a.m. and end at 2:15 to allow those sites who are traveling from a far distance to get back home at a reasonable time. I know for the most part, most sites will have transportation arranged at this point, but if you are having difficulties arranging travel, please contact me and I'll be more than happy to assist you. A big question was about meals. So meal times will be at 8 a.m., lunch is at noon, and dinner is at 5 p.m. There will be an agenda that is sent out with finalized times coming up quite soon, within the next day or two. So that will be sent out to all sites to have a better understanding of what the session outline is and times for breaks and meals and downtime for the youth. Snacks will be made available throughout the training over the 2 days, as I know that that was a concern for some sites, but there will be snacks made available throughout the training. And just to go over some pictures, myself, Michelle, and Sabrina did visit the site in the summer, and we were able to look at the lodges, the meeting space, some of the activities that they had at Teen Ranch, and we just like to share these pictures with you right now. On the top left, we have the main cabin that we'll be staying in, and it's quite new. I think they just finished it this year, and so it's quite new and quite clean. And there are some other pictures of inside on a later slide. On the bottom right, we have the meeting space. It's quite large, and that's where we'll be doing the majority of our training with the youth. We'll be having it set up with 2 projectors so that everyone will be able to see what's going on. So as I said, this is just a picture on the top left of the inside. Excuse the mess, there was actually a group in when we went to do the site visit, so there's quite a bit of stuff around. But there are about 3 bunks in each cabin, and then actually that back door there right by the window, that is actually the bathroom. So for every room, they will have their own bathroom, but that will be shared with about 6 people. We will be splitting up female and male, and teachers will be having their own cabins that they'll be staying in and will not be staying in the rooms with the youth. On the top left, we have the fire pit. We are going to be having an evening activity at the end of day 1 with youth facilitators from Niagara speaking during that time. And I believe that is from 8 o'clock till 9. And on the bottom right, we have a common area that is from the same building that we saw on one of the first pictures, and that's just on the top floor, and it has a very nice fireplace. It has board games and can be used as a meeting space or a gathering space or a space that youth can use to have some downtime. Some supplies that youth are going to be required to bring are just on this slide here. It also will be sent out in a package to each of the public health sites so that you can provide that to the youth so that they know what to bring. Clothing, just because of the time of the year that we're going, we'd like to ensure that they're bringing warm clothes, so long pants, warm jacket, warm hat, gloves, and outdoor shoes that would be closed toe and waterproof. Just again, because of the time of year that we're going, we want to make sure that we're not going to run into any concerns with youth staying warm. Bedding, pillow and pillowcase, and sleeping bags. So Teen Ranch does not provide linens, so they will be required to bring that from home. Extras, appropriate toiletries, towels, water bottle, bug spray, and sunscreen.
So the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Program aims to improve health and well-being of children and youth through a focus on mental health promotion, acceptance of mental illness, and reduction of related stigma and substance misuse prevention. Working together, youth and adult partners will work towards improving the quality of life in their school and community environments through influencing, supporting, and being role models to their peer groups. They will support peer leadership programs to enable youth to actively make their school and their community a better place. And they will create a forum that provides youth the opportunity to develop, refine, and practice leadership skills, empower youth to effect positive change, invest in future leaders, and increase awareness of substance use, misuse, and mental health issues within the young population. We hope that this presentation has given you a better understanding of the Youth Mental Health and Addiction Champion Project. We look forward to working with every one of you on this really exciting initiative as we embark on this new and exciting journey. Thank you. So we'll take a moment now to address any questions that may have arisen from the webinar today. Again, if you can please either type them in the chat box, which is on the right-hand side of your screen, or the Q&A box, which is on the right bottom-hand side of your screen, or please do email them directly to me. It's Sabrina at RNAO. So SMERALI@rnao.ca. Thank you. You can also just directly talk into the microphone on your headset as well, if there are any questions. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. We will archive the webinar. The webinar is being recorded as we speak, and Kyle will send out the link to the rest of the sites today, or to all the sites actually, to share with any participants that you may have. At this time, we will conclude today's webinar because there are no questions coming in. And we do invite you to tune back in at 1 o'clock for the webinar on Foundations for a Healthy School. Thank you.
Thank you.